Hello, freedom seekers. This is Non-Monogamous Mark coming to you with my weekly report from my home here in Ventura, California. And so tonight we're going to be talking about safety and security in your relationships. Now, before we get to that, though, I always take about the first 5-6 minutes just to chat a little bit, let people come online and join us for the conversation. And so while I do that, then I just kind of chat. And tonight, I thought about what I'm going to chat about as the prelude part of this video. And wondered about, because I wondered about the things that you're involved in doing in your life and how you really feel about them. You see, what got me to thinking about that is, last week I showed you the golden ticket. And I've got that last week it was a bar, a golden ticket bar, and this week it's a golden ticket round. And now that's chocolate that I made with my partner Chris when I was in Seattle over the last month of August and September. And I had a great time making this chocolate. Made about 12 pounds of chocolate, and where we started with some beans from Peru. And we took those beans and turned them into this really amazing chocolate. But I kind of, got to thinking about that. It really made me think, about what really gets me into enjoying and making such awesome chocolate. And what it came down to is that I'm a person who's always has always taken a great deal of passion and put into the things that I'm doing. Oh, I can't say I've always done that, but certainly has been for the last 10 years of my life, where I really take and put a lot of passion into the things that I do. Now, one of the keys with that, though, is not to find myself trying to do too many things, and that is often a challenge that I have, and that I commonly will have so many things going on that I really am not able to do any of them very well. But with the case with the chocolate, though, it is something where I really have been able to do this well. And my chocolate making experience went back to probably about 7 years, 7 years ago. 7 years ago, when I first got interested in making chocolate. No, that's not what I'm going to be talking about tonight. I'm going to be talking about, about the safety and security in our relationships. But how does it all relate? It all relates because when you take and focus your time and your energy and your passion in a direction, and that's what we talk about every week when I come on here, is I talk about, what is your overriding desire? What are you trying to create in your life? Because we do create the lives that we live, and a lot of times we don't like to admit that. You'd rather give your power away and say, well, it's not my fault. I've been there. I've been there, and I've been there in business where I went broke, and really, I could say it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault because the state changed some regulations that cost me millions of dollars. I mean, literally millions of dollars. They changed the regulations so they could have more tax revenues. I couldn't comply with the regulations, and they told me that I was one of 14 businesses that was identified that had to go out of business. My employees would get unemployment and all kinds of good benefits, and as the owner of the company, I got the privilege of going broke. And from that experience, then I took and had myself a really good pity party. And I did that for a number of years because I was able to just say, I did everything right. I didn't do anything wrong. Well, but you see, what I did wrong was not choosing to get back on the horse again. I sat there and wallowed in my pity. And I did that in my non-monogamous life once as well. And that's really what ended up teaching me this lesson, because my business experience happened before my non-monogamous experience. I had fallen deeply in love with a woman, and we had seen each other and spent every weekend together for a whole year. She was deeply in love with me, but I was married, and she respected that and honored that. She had no intention to steal me away from my wife, no desire to steal me away from my wife, and yet she knew that her overriding desire, her number one goal when it came to relationships, was to be able to be married. And so we had worked our way through that and concluded that how we were going to work that out is that she was going to go ahead and date some other guys, and for the first time in her life, then she was fucking other guys, and me at the same time, and being open and honest. And she found that to be so liberating. She was a single woman, but if she had ever taken and been with more than one guy at a time, she certainly didn't do it in a manner where she was able to freely and openly talk about it and tell the other guys about it. And instead, she kind of, did it in a way like many people do, where it was kind of kept undercover and sneaking around and things like that. And so it was so liberating for her just to be able to take and have her relationship with me where we loved each other so deeply, but yeah, she could date other people and have fun having sex with them and going out with them. And she was just really like that, really loved that. But then, it came back where she decided that, because she wanted to be married, and she knew that I could not marry her. And so she decided, and we talked, because we had talked about it, and I left, of course, the decision up to her. I couldn't make that decision for her as to how she was going to handle the situation. And so she decided that she would find some guy that she would fall in love with, and he would fall in love with her, that would ask her to marry him so that she could be married and have the MRS license. And at the same time, then he would be someone that would have to accept the fact that she comes with a lover, and that would be me. So she ended up finding a gentleman that fell madly in love with her, and I understood. I mean, on the first date, he fell madly in love with her. On the second date, he asked her to marry him. This is all in the course of a week. They met online on a Friday night, and I was there that evening and helped her to respond to him and write the answers out to the questions that she had and all that. And so they met online on Friday night, and then Sunday, when I went home to my wife, then she went off and had her first date with him. And he fell madly in love with her. And then on Tuesday, they had another date. And on Tuesday, he said, "Will you marry me? I'm madly in love with you. You're just like this incredible woman. Where have you been all my life?" And I do understand that, because I was deeply in love with her, and I still love her to this day. And so, she then, because she hadn't told him about me yet, and so she came along and said, "Well, I want to be married in the worst way, and we've only had like one date, so this is a little fast, but I'm really open to consider that as a possibility, but you have to consider the fact that I have a lover, and he's married and has a wife, but that he lives a polyamorous life, and where then he's able to open his heart up to love more than one person at a time. And I love him, and he loves me, and we've kind of talked about this and worked this through for the past year, and that somebody who came along and that I got married to would know that I come with a lover." And so she told him that, and he then paused for a minute and said, "That doesn't work for me. I'll only marry you in an exclusive relationship, monogamous relationship." And so she came back to him and said, "Well, can you give me a month to give you an answer? I mean, I've only had one date with you. You sound like a great guy, but can you give me a month to give you an answer? And he says, I'll give you a month. And so that's where then in the course of that month, she and I talked, and we kept seeing each other every week. And in the course of that month, then she ended up deciding that she was going to accept his offer of marriage, and which meant then that she had to break up with me. And so there was the situation again that I had an incredible pain, the heartbreak that caused me. And it caused me a heartbreak that, it was a pain that I had never experienced any kind of physical pain, mental or emotional pain like that in my life. It was the greatest, and to this day, I got in a car accident, it was 4 years ago. It totaled my vehicle and put me into a situation where I had to have ongoing medical treatments, and I'm still having need for medical treatments today, and live with pain every day now. But none of that, nothing in my years previous had ever come close to the pain that I felt when she told me that she was going to accept his proposal and break up with me. And so that was heart-wrenching. And what I did, I didn't go and like I had done with my business experience prior to that time, where I had myself a pity party. I stayed in a really positive energy place and went on to continue my relationships with other women. And the fact is, within a month of that woman breaking up with me, I had 3 new girlfriends, and plus then my wife. And so then I was in a relationship with 4 women at a time. And that was very common for me in my dating life and dating experience. And it is to this day, where, I'm enjoying the company of anywhere from between 2 and 4 women. And it's just part of what I enjoy in my ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. I hope that you are enjoying the same, or if not, that maybe that's something that I'm able to help you move forward and be enjoying yourself. It's just, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience to be able to take and live a life that's ethical and consensually non-monogamous, where you can enjoy, whether it be just for sex or whether it be for sex and for love, you can be enjoying multiple people all at the same time. And in fact, yeah, it's right now it's a little more than 4 people that I'm kind of entertaining and enjoying, and it's a lovely, wonderful, wonderful life. Like one gal that I met one time, in the polyamorous community, she said to me, she says, well, the way, Mark, that I know when I need another partner in my life, because there's always the question that comes up, and I'm going to try to move the camera just a little bit to get this glare out there. That's, I think, a little better. But so she says, the way that I come to know that I need, like how many partners is enough? And she says, the way that I come to know that I have enough partners is that she practices solely polyamory, which means that she has no intention of getting into a real like marriage type relationship and living with another partner, and that she likes living alone and having her own place and having the independence of that. And so there are people that practice what's called solely polyamory, but at the same time, she really enjoys being able to have the sexual company and the camaraderie and the relationships of multiple lovers. And so she has committed relationships with multiple lovers. And with her, she said to me, she says, Mark, how I know that I have enough is that through the course of a standard normal month, that if there's something that I want to do, like, with a partner, like go to a movie or go out for a hike or to go out for coffee or for dinner or anything like that, and if there's something that where I'm wanting to do, and routinely, then I end up either not doing that or doing it alone because my partners that I have are not available, then that's when it tells me that I don't have enough of partners yet. And so then I will go out looking for another partner and another lover to have in my life. And so some of my lovers that I may see them, only once every month or two. I have a lover like that in my life. And so other lovers I see every week. And I have lovers like that in my life. And so then, she says, that really is the indicator for me as to whether I need more partners in my life, more lovers in my life. And so with my situation then, when that relationship came to an end, within a month, I had 3 new partners. But even with those 3 partners, I was hurting badly inside. And I attached myself. And this is something that I teach and talk a lot about in my coaching programs. And that is how that attachment theory, how we attach ourselves to people, we attach ourselves to things, objects in unhealthy ways, in ways that really don't serve us and don't help us to live a life that gives us the greatest amount of satisfaction and pleasure that we can possibly have because of our attachments. Well, I had attached myself to Daphne, this woman, so deeply that it took away from the satisfaction and pleasure when that relationship came to an end. Now, since then, it's one of the things that Kat and I have spent an extensive, and the reason we have mine and Kat's relationship, boy, when we began our relationship, it was, and it continues to be today, such a deep, strong relationship that in the beginning, we adopted our monogamous norms. Now, we didn't realize that we were adopting these monogamous norms. And I think that a lot of people trying to live an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, that they struggle because they adopt into their non-monogamous life monogamous norms that they really aren't aware that they're even doing this. Kat and I certainly weren't aware that we were doing this when we started our relationship. And yet, that there were comments made that about the love and the connection that we have. And then in fact, if anything, now the love and the connection we have is even deeper than what we had in the very first year. But in the first year, we kind of went back to, like monogamous thinking that, we have to have this relationship forever. This is just such an incredible match and combination, the chemistry that we have and how we just jive together. It's just so amazing that we just got to spend the rest of our lives together. And talking then about the commitments to spend the rest of our lives together. And I find getting into today's topic, and that is safety and security in relationships. That's why we start talking and having those conversations, and that, and in the moment, in the heat of the moment, not necessarily even a heat of a sexual moment, but in the heat of love, that we take and obligate our future in ways that we have no idea what is going to transpire and happen in the future. Just look at the divorce rate. Most of those people who get divorced this year, most of them start out deeply and madly in love with each other in the beginning. Yeah. And yet here they are getting divorced this year. Now, you see, And that's going to be subjects for other conversations when we talk more about divorce. I don't want to get really heavily into that tonight, but and so with that breakup, I held on to, I attached myself to the pain. And I consciously, believe it or not, I was very aware of what I was doing. I consciously chose to attach myself to that pain. Now, because what I said to myself is that the only way possible for that love to prove itself and to have the depth of meaning that it had is if I experienced then this overwhelming amount of pain from my heartbreak. And so, that's not the same way that it happened when I lost millions of dollars and had to go out of business, or then I had myself a pity party. But the thing is it comes down to how we react and we respond to things in our life. And do we respond in a way that something happened to us? Or do we respond in a way that something happens for us? It's a big difference. And you get to choose which way that you're going to respond to it. Did it happen to you? To you like in a way that, yeah, you got the shaft up the butt, and it's not feeling good. It's not feeling good at all. Or do you respond in a way that if life happens for you, it happens for you because you're able then to move on with your life in a totally new way with new opportunities. I mean, certainly when that whole situation happened, like I said, within a month, I was in 3 new relationships. In fact, one of those women that I was in a relationship with within a month is Chris, the woman that I continue to be in a relationship with today. And here we are now 11 years later. But even Chris knows that even after 11 years, I do not obligate the future because we don't know what the future is going to hold. And that's one of the things that my monogamous relationship did teach me, is that there's no way of knowing what the future is going to hold. But the problem is when you obligate yourself to the future, you limit and restrict your ability to bring the best of you out. And when you start to not any longer bring the best of you out, then how are you showing up for life? How are you showing up with your partner? How are you showing up in your work? Wherever that reflects. And that brings me back to where we started in this conversation with this chocolate. You see, because I when I do something, when I make the decision that this is what I want to do, in this case, I made a decision. I wanted to make some chocolate. In fact, excuse me a moment while I go ahead and chat away with you and open this up so I can take a bite, because I'm telling you, I made some really great chocolate this time around. It got a little melty on that trip up because I stored it in the trunk. I wasn't thinking about keeping it in the car. But on the drive from Seattle to here to Ventura, it was in the trunk and got a little melty along the way. But I put it in the fridge when I got here, and that is some good chocolate. But it's not easy to make chocolate. And I have had chocolate made by professional chocolate makers that was really bad chocolate. And so there's many steps in the process along the way of making chocolate. And the only thing that I can figure out is that those chocolate makers who have made some really bad chocolate, they had so much of themselves or their money invested into that chocolate that even though they made really bad chocolate from it, they just can't do anything else but to try to sell it to someone. And You see, because when you make chocolate, you buy beans in these chocolate makers, and they'll buy, thousands of pounds of cacao beans. And you oftentimes from suppliers like this, the bean that I made this chocolate from was from Peru. And I buy in small quantities, but that means that I pay a premium price for my beans. I mean, I'll buy, 5 pounds of beans at a time, 10 pounds at most. But they're buying thousands of pounds. And when you go out and buy thousands of pounds of beans, I don't know if they don't test the beans first to make sure the beans themselves are good, or if they do test the beans and find that the beans are good, but then when they go to make chocolate, that somehow they ruin it, which there's many possibilities there for ruining the chocolate when you make it, because there's a lot of different variables in making chocolate that changes the flavor and changes the outcome. Here again, that's like the lives that we live when we start out in a relationship. We have all the best intentions with that individual. But then things don't always go in the way that we intended. When my wife and I first got married, our intentions were to have great sex. We're virgins. And we had intentions. We talked about it before we got married. That we both wanted to have a great sex life. It just did not happen. And subsequently, because of that and the friction that created between the two of us, we also failed to bring out the best in each other. Now, there was a lot of safety and security in our relationship. And with all that safety and security that we had in our relationship, and also particularly being highly religious, very involved in our Christian church life and all that kind of stuff, that, the whole idea of the fact that maybe this just is not working for us and we'd be better and have better lives if we chose a different direction that didn't include each other. But of course, we wouldn't even entertain that. Wouldn't allow that kind of thinking even in our minds. But we all need to be asking ourselves that. Am I so heavily invested in this chocolate that even if it's bad, I still got to make chocolate with it? And there's no way I'm ever going to make good chocolate from it? There's no way that you're ever going to make a truly good life that you want for yourself. And that impacts so many different ways. When your sex life is not great and good with multiple partners, and that's what you want, it's going to affect your income and the quality of work that you do. And so here again, going right back to the beginning, I kind of said, do you put passion into the things that you do? Because this chocolate, the reason why this chocolate is so absolutely good is because I put a lot of passion into not just making the chocolate, but it took me, I'll bet I have 500 hours invested into my highly specialized knowledge, and you might say expertise, in how to make chocolate by taking and starting out with these beans. In this case, beans from Peru. I've got other beans from the Philippines and Ecuador and all kinds of different places that I have some beans. In fact, these are Peru. I've got some chocolate here with me also in Ventura that are from beans from Ecuador that I made chocolate out of. And so, that if you're so heavily invested that you're going to just keep pushing forward and pushing to make it work, well, I know what that's like too, because in business, and that's one of the things with, my weekly report and wrap up here on Monday nights is that I talk to you about what's going on in my business life and how that compares to my monogamous life. And the transitions that I'm going through really are very similar to the transitions that you're going through. And And so some of those transitions is that we attach ourselves and we place meaning on things that aren't working for us. And we just continue to do the same things because we find safety and security in the life that we have. So much safety and security that you're not willing to take a risk of failure to do something different. Just a moment here. Okay. Well, I'll put that down until I finish the video, but really is good chocolate. So, about safety and security in relationships, you see, right now we're having this whole pandemic going on, and places around the world are going back now to lockdown in many places because the numbers are starting to go up. And what's going to happen here in the United States? Who has a clue? But you see, because my future is not so obligated, I can stay pretty flexible and pretty easygoing about the whole thing. But for some people, this pandemic has come along and it has really shook up their life. It shook their world up in a way that they never imagined that would be possible in their lifetime. Whether they owned a business and the business was chugging along, or they went to work in a company that was chugging along, and they had a place they went to work with and work at, and co-workers to chat with and visit with, and boy, their life now is just totally different for many people. And so oftentimes that we place this whole, the safety and security, the feelings that we have that give us a feeling of and sense of safety and a feeling and a sense of security, we take and put all that. People put it in their jobs. I have been like unemployed for an awful long time, since I was around 24, 25 years old, I think was my last job, and I'm 63 now. So, almost 40 years of unemployment. But self-employment, I certainly put my safety and security in my self-employment, just like I put my safety and my security in my marriage. And I obligated my future. And where should we be placing our safety and security? And there's really only one answer for that. And relating back to last week's video, I talked about how trust comes back to you. And that's the same conclusion that I have for you here today in this video, is that when it comes back to the safety and security in your life and in your relationships, your most important relationship needs to be with you, not someone else. Don't put the we and the us before the I. And that's what monogamy does, is that it makes the we and the I more important, the we and the us more important than the I. Fact is, in our society and in our culture, we're really taught that you got to put I down, because otherwise you're just being selfish. And I'm really kind of turning that upside down in the things that I am now teaching and talking about in the world of ethical and consensual non-monogamy, because you see, I've studied this now for 40 years of my life, and I have observed and studied and read about and learned a lot of things that tell me that the world is better off when people are selfish. Not selfish in a greedy way, but selfish in a way that they want to have the best life that they can have for themselves, not for their families, not for their wives. You see, that was the thing that I did in building my previous business, is that I wanted to have the best life for my wife. And when then And I created that. I created a great life for my wife. It wasn't, I mean, I worked 80 to 100 hours a week, so it really wasn't, I couldn't say it was the best life for me. I made a lot of money and had some good times, but it was just hard work. And yet my wife enjoyed it. She enjoyed the money. She enjoyed the lifestyle. She enjoyed not having to go to work in a job. She enjoyed being able to do volunteer work in the community and have status from that. And so she enjoyed all that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, that I just doing my thing and working hard. And so my safety and sense of safety and security I had put in my company because I had planned and wanted to retire when I was 55 years old. In fact, when I was 49 years old, either 48 or 49 years old, I had my 48 years old. I had somebody come and take a look, have a look at my company, because I said, I want to put my company up for sale in about 4 or 5 years. And please come and have a look at my company so that I can maximize its value. And so they went through some things and gave it a value at that point of $3 million. And then kind of helped me to know what kinds of things that I could tweak so that in 4 to 5 years, I might be able to get $4 or $5 million instead of $3 million for it. Well, but you see, nobody ever expected to have my life shook up the way it was shook up when the state of Washington changed some regulations, and me and 13 other companies and other industries that had been around for a long time, they all had employees. They were all located throughout all different places in the state. But we just could not comply with the new regulations. And the new regulations right away were bringing in $25 million a month in added tax revenues to the state. And so they said, well, no way are we going to give up our $25 million that we're making by going back to the old stuff, the old way that we did. We want to keep the money flowing. And of course, we then just were collateral damage. And that's really how it was looked at. And that, no, they didn't take and buy us out. They just said, well, we'll give your employees unemployment, and good luck in the future. And they shut the door. And after I opened the door to have them come into my company for 3 days, a team of 3 experts that the state sent in, and trying to find a solution. But that became a liberating experience for me as well. There's a lot I have learned throughout my life. There have been processes for me. There's a lot of things I learned the hard way, and that's why I'm here now, to help you to learn things in a way before something comes along and you have to learn it the hard way. And so, like, tonight's video is really about shaking things up. And in fact, I even had, let me just switch over here to my document that I try to bring in every week. And that is where I wanted to talk about shaking things up. Now, usually I go through this page here in this document, but I do that every week. And I'm going to go ahead and, since we're so far into this, I'm going to skip on past that. And I do have a homework assignment for you this week. So I'm going to get right on into talking about that. What I'd like you to do, and then I'll continue to talk about shaking things up, and that's the safety and the security in your relationship. So what I'd like to ask you to do for your homework assignment this week is I want you to take and have 3 20-minute sessions this week. It can be, and hopefully it's on different days, but not too close together. Maybe you'd have to have 2 sessions on Saturday, for instance, 20-minute sessions, and that would be fine. But have 3 20-minute sessions where you quietly go somewhere and you have a brainstorming session with yourself. And you just and if you want to involve someone else, then that's okay too, because it's really can be very helpful to have other people involved. But for this particular brainstorming session, I want you to be asking yourself, what could you do to liberate your sex life and set yourself free of the safe and secure place that you're at now? You see, we find that even people who are living ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, oftentimes they get into this place where they're safe and secure in their relationships as well. And I was that way, been that way a couple of times in my relationships where I felt safe and secure. And so people get that way with their jobs, but I want you to focus on this with your sex life. You know, what could you do to liberate your sex life, to take you out of that place where everything is safe and it feels safe and is secure, whether you are living a non-monogamous life already or whether you are living a monogamous life? What you want to move in the direction of being able to have more sex with more people more often. I even find with non-monogamous people that that's really ends up being their limiting factor, you know, and is that they get to a place where they're not really having more sex with more people more often. You know, my desire is to have so many lovers in one location, like here in the Ventura, California area, where then I start introducing my lovers to one another, and then we can have wonderful, lovely times of group sex together. That's just one of my desires. And so, yeah, the thing is that with this then and brainstorming, you know, you do want to ask yourself, well, what is it you want? What would liberate your sex life? What is it that you want? And then you come back and envision that. What would you like? For me, right now, with my sex life, is what would I like? It's that, yeah, I would like to have enough friends and lovers that here in the Ventura area, that I have sex with, that we all enjoy getting together and having sex on Friday nights together. Those who can come by on Friday night and enjoy a wonderful evening of having sex with each other they make it. Some people will make it one Friday and not another Friday, and just that there would be so many people, not like hundreds, but you know, maybe like, I don't know how many people it's going to take, but it's probably going to take 10 to 20 couples, and maybe some single people put in the mix there as well, where then that on Friday nights, then we have Friday festivals, and every Friday where, you know, those who can make it, those who can't, that's fine too, but we just have a lovely, wonderful time amongst friends. So that's what I want to create. But what do you want to create? Maybe you don't want to create that for yourself, but maybe you do. I don't know. But think about what you want to create, and then list out, brainstorm yourself, what could you do to liberate your sex life? Be willing to list out ridiculous things. Like, for instance, right now I'm working on not so much my sex life as I am my financial life. You know, and right now my overriding desire is to make an online income of $5,000 a month that is sustainable and ongoing. And so, like, my coach says to me, she says, well, Mark, ask yourself, when you sit down every week and do your weekly planning, what could you do in order to accomplish your goals for this week? And list out all the coulds. The importance of this is that this gets you to thinking about possibilities outside the box. And because so often we get so entrenched and so stuck in our one particular mode of thinking and thought processes that we just have great difficulty even imagining how we could possibly liberate our sex life, or in my case, liberate my financial life. And so, yes, think about what could you do. So like my coach says, You know, think about what could you do this week. Like, let's say my goal this week was to make a certain amount of money. Then what could I do? My goal, my coach says, well, go ahead and write down on that list. You could always go out and rob a convenience store. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to do it. It may be absurd and ridiculous. But it's part of the brainstorming process, and the part of the process that helps you to open up your creative energy to look at the possibilities. And in amongst those possibilities that you open up for yourself, you're going to find that a lot of them are ridiculous. But you'll find the one or two in there that aren't at all ridiculous, and they actually help you to move forward in your life instead of staying stuck. So with this week's assignment, I want you to do 3 20-minute sessions before next Monday night's video. And then write down everything that comes to mind. No matter how ridiculous it is, write down everything that comes to mind. And then next week, I'm going to come on here and I'm going to talk about what to do with your list of things that you could do. It's not what things you will do, but it's just possibilities. What could you do? Even if it's totally insane and absurd, write it down. And I want in those 3 20-minute sessions, that means you're going to spend a total of an hour doing this exercise, but it's got to be 3 separate 20-minute sessions, not one after another. I don't want you, to spend an hour sitting there at one time, or even spend 20 minutes and then do a second 20-minute session. 2 20-minute sessions in a day, if they're like 4 or 5 hours apart, would be okay, but separate these sessions out. Okay, so now let's get back to shaking things up. So as I was saying here, that the similarity here is that the safety and the security that people have in their financial life, which usually comes from their job, or in my case, what came from my business, that is very similar. It's the same thing to the safety and the security that we find oftentimes in relationships. And with that safety and security that we have, we limit ourselves, we restrict ourselves, we obligate ourselves, we keep ourselves from taking risk to actually make things better for ourselves. And so you end up stuck. And time goes by. And let me just throw out a question to you now. How long ago was it since you saw and heard my very first video that you ever saw me make? You see, because, I've been here on YouTube for, let's see, on YouTube on this channel now, I think for 5 years, I think, in making videos and talking about liberating your life. Liberating your sex life, or liberating your relationships. You see, and if we have that false sense of security in our relationships, that false sense of safety, like, last week, I talked last week about getting in this state of flow. And I talked about how imagining yourself on this inner tube floating through down this river, just having this beautiful, wonderful experience. But then, of course, then things get shook up a little bit, and you experience some rapids, and maybe even things get a little scary and they get dicey. And so you have the opportunity that there's a boulder in the middle of the river, or there is a tree that's fallen over that you can grab a hold of. But there's someplace for you to grab a hold of and latch onto, and then that takes you out of the flow. And that's how our relationships oftentimes become. And that they become something that we latch onto, feels safe and it feels secure, feels good. But latching onto that takes us out of the flow of creating the life that we want. And we then don't move forward anymore, because there we are we just stay stuck, feeling all the safety and security all around us. But there we are, we're stuck. And I know many of my listeners feel exactly that same way because they contact me and they ask me questions and they tell me what they're dealing with and what they're going through. And there's a lot of people out there that feel stuck. Now, maybe that's not you, but if it's not you, I'm going to ask you still, what could you possibly do to liberate your sex life? Because even like myself, I'm not living the liberated sex life that I want to be living 2 years from now. Excuse me. And so if I'm not living the liberated sex life today, now I'm living a sex life today that I absolutely love. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing I am unhappy about in living the sex life that I have. But yet, you see, when you're living a great life, you find that you just keep wanting more. And what do I want? I want more sex with more people more often. I really do. And so I then think about, okay, well, in 2 years from now, what would I like to be able to have my sex life, my liberated sex life look like? And then how am I going to shake some things up to get there? Because it usually requires that things get shook up. Now, for a lot of people this year, with their economics and finances and jobs and businesses, things have been shook up a whole lot. But the point, that's exactly one of the points of doing this video tonight, is do not wait for something outside of yourself to come along and shake things up to get you moving into a direction that you want to be moving in. But what I find interesting is that a lot of people are getting things shook up, but instead of using that to maybe start to work to creating something better than what they had, they resort back to clinging to, attaching themselves to that which was safe and secure before, and they just want to rinse and repeat and do it all over again. And I find that that's the same thing that happens with people in their sex lives as well. That we get into this process where we just rinse and repeat and do it all over again because, yeah, it feels safe and it feels secure and it's good enough. But you'll never create the life that you absolutely love doing that, though. And so let's go ahead and move on from there and get to then the weekly report. And so let me get to the report card here. And I want to remind you in going over this report card to save the date of November 27th. That's the Friday after Thanksgiving. And soon I'll be having a registration page so that you can register for the webinar that Kat and I are going to be doing on November 27th, where we're going to do 60 to 90 minutes to help you to prepare as you go on to finishing this year and moving into next year. So helping you to prepare to live a life that is what we call magnetic ELF and ECNM life. That's a magnetic life where you are pulling to you the things that you want in your life that give you more satisfaction and pleasure. And the things that give you less satisfaction and pleasure, you are pushing them away or pushing them out of your life if they're already in your life. Because you certainly don't want things in your life that give you less satisfaction and pleasure. And so that's so that you can live then an ELF life, which is easy, liberated, and fun, and also an ECNM life, an ethical, consensual, and non-monogamous life. And so as I talk about every week, I have these 3 overriding desires, and I'm, again, not going to go ahead and tonight and go into those. We go through those every week, but because I'm going to just get onto the report here so we can wrap this up tonight. And so what were my bottlenecks, breakdowns, and breakthroughs last week? And that was that I had lost momentum. You see, I had gone from Seattle, the week previous on Wednesday. Then I drove up to Ventura here. And whenever that happens, there's this break in my momentum. And there's the things that I work on and do in Seattle are a lot different than what I work on and do here in Ventura. And so with that break in momentum, then when I get to one place or another, in this case, when I got to Ventura, I like to have the vision in my mind, the picture in my mind of an old-fashioned steam locomotive engine for a railroad. They've got these humongous wheels that are connected with this big, heavy metal bar. And as those wheels start to slowly turn, that bar is moving back and forth, back and forth. But boy, it really takes a lot of inertia, a lot of forward movement to finally get up where they got momentum going. And that's really what happens with me in going back and forth between Seattle and Ventura a lot of times, is that I just lose inertia. And so last week, I had a really tough time last week getting my momentum even started. Getting those wheels even turning, not to even speak of momentum. And so it reflected in the lack of my success for the week, which we'll get to the report card here in just a moment. And so, that's then was my breakdown. But then by Friday, it also became my breakthrough. And that every day, I would look at each and every day, and there was not a sense of satisfaction and pleasure with the time that I spent working every day. And there's some disappointment. And so at the end then of the day, I'd say, okay, tomorrow's a fresh start. Tomorrow's a new day. And so I go on with that every single day, so that by Friday, I felt like those wheels were starting to finally turn. Now, not to a point where I had momentum. It's probably going to take me into this week or next week, probably next week, before I really start feeling that sense of really having momentum going again. But at least the wheels are turning, and that then becomes the breakthrough for me. So there are 3 things to accomplish this week that I'm working on, and let me get to we'll go over that before I go into last week's report card. So this week, because what I learned last week is that when I'll jump to last week's report card. One of the things is shutting down my computer, and I talked about how big of a task that was. Well, sometimes it's kind of like looking at the elephant and saying, I'm supposed to eat that elephant. Oh my God, how am I ever going to do that? And it's hard to get your mouth chowing on that elephant and chewing on it. And so what I learned last week, because I made progress last week in getting my computer shut down, but I did not succeed in that. And one of the things that I learned is that oftentimes things take more time than what I realize they're going to take. And so a little tip here for you is that sometimes you have to break it down and put some numbers to it. And that you can't always control the final outcome. I know the final outcome that I want is to shut my computer down. And I can't always control how that I can get that done this week. It may take me 2 or 3 weeks to get that done. But what I can control is, like right now, then this week, one of my goals then is to spend 1 hour a day for 5 days this week working on the things that I need to work on in order to get my computer shut down. So I can do that. And if I just do that consistently every day for 5 days this week, and then if I need to go into next week and do the same thing next week, then eventually I'm going to have that outcome that I want. But I've taken it and put it into measurable and bite-sized pieces. That's the secret for you here as well. And so the same thing going on, the next thing was last week's goal is to get caught up and current on Ollie's training. That's one of my coaches. And I give myself a fail on that because I got so wrapped up in trying to get my bookkeeping done and trying to get my computer closed that I didn't even get around to the material that I'm trying to get through and get current on for my coaching program with Ollie. And so that was a fail. And that's when I realized then with that fail, I need to do things differently. I can't do things the same way because if I do things the same way, I'll get the same results. And I want better results than that. I want to make progress. And that progress doesn't mean that I have to accomplish my end goal every week, but in making that progress, I have to be moving towards that end goal every week. And so that's why I say to you this week, give you the homework assignment of spending these 3 20-minute sessions of brainstorming of how you could liberate your life sexually. And so then my other goal for last week was 1, get my computer shut down, and 2, get my bookkeeping done, and 3, to get all these training done. And so those are like trying to bite off the elephant, and it just couldn't be done. And so this week then is that I have actionable plans, which then will help to lead me towards the end result that I want, because I can control the action that I take. And so it's this week then, my actions are spending 1 hour a day, 5 days, getting my bookkeeping done. Spending 1 hour a day for 5 days this week, getting my computer shut down. Spending 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, getting caught up and current on Ollie's training. And so that's then what I'm working on this week. I hope that you are following along and adopting some of these same tools and techniques that I'm showing you and making these work for you with the overriding desires in your life. And like I say every week, you really only want 1 or 2, 3 at the very most. I have 3 overriding desires. They're all listed right here. And I didn't go over them this week, but I usually go through them. And I have 3 because it's a lot. 3 is a lot. But I've got a partner involved with me in making these come a reality. And so that's really is a big help for me. And that's why then I don't find that 3 is overwhelming. And so thank you very much. And I'm going to go ahead and finish up here and say goodnight again this week, and appreciate your being here and spending time with me. And we'll see you back here next Monday night. Good night now.